The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's Toolbox Talk. My name is Sean Frey, guys, and I'll be here in the background throughout the webinar. Just before we do get in, guys, just a short little introduction, as it is only a half an hour session. At any point in the webinar, guys, you can go ahead and pop in a question in the questions tab. Do not worry, you will not disturb Chris. All of the questions, they come through to me, and then I will give those over to him at the end of the webinar. If it is a question on the service itself, guys, I will go ahead and answer it as soon as I can. But if it is a question on the source material, obviously I leave it up to the professionals. Other than that, guys, I am going to be here, so please feel free to at any point pop anything in there. So let's get on with this morning's webinar. Chris, are you there?
Yes, Sean, thank you very much. And once again, a very big welcome to all of our attendees this morning. Again, we appreciate how much time you take off to listen to these Toolbox Talks. It really is such a great way for a reminder on health and safety, and also the interaction that we have had between ourselves has been tremendous. We want to encourage you to continue to do that. We really appreciate all those comments and suggestions coming through. This morning's Toolbox Talk, as always, is brought to you by FEM and IOPSA, and is also accredited with 1 CPD point by the South African Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And on behalf, perhaps of just myself, and if I can include all of you, just a very big thank you to FEM, IOPSA and SAOSH for bringing things such as this to our attention, because we really do appreciate these reminders. All of us need them, especially when we are stuck in a situation where time just seems to fly past us. I don't know how many of you have woken up and realized it's September. We're coming to the last quarter of 2018. It really has flown by, but really these reminders are so good in this fast-paced world that we are living in. Now, last week we discussed housekeeping, and one of the biggest issues about housekeeping was that many of us are not doing it as often as we should be doing it. But there is another thing that we are also not doing as often as we should be doing, and that is maintenance. And that is why we're going to discuss maintenance for a little bit this morning. So we're actually going to be targeting each and every one of you, whether you are an employer, an employee, or even a safety officer or safety manager. All of us are actually involved in the maintenance program. And you'll see why as we go through some of the suggestions on the maintenance program that we currently have in our company. But last week we also asked if there was any language that you would also like to hear these Toolbox Talks in, or perhaps your employees, friends, or family members that would like to join in. And we got some great responses. About 90% of the responses that came through were for Zulu. So we really thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. We are going to be working on it. And myself, Articulated and IOPSA, we are busy sourcing somebody to actually translate this into Zulu and then give a live Zulu Toolbox Talk once a week for you. We are going to try and roll this out as soon as possible, but we thank you very much for your patience, and also we appreciate the suggestions that came through. And then obviously to all our Zimbabweans that are tuning in, I got a few emails from you guys. Zwidibor from our side, thank you very much for also sending that through, and we are going to start working on those as soon as possible. But if you have any further comments or questions or queries, suggestions, even complaints, please send them through either to myself, chris@ohss.co.za, or through to the Articulate guys. So let's not hold you up any longer. We want to start with our Toolbox Talk this morning on maintenance. Now, the meaning or definition of maintenance is to preserve a condition. We are given something in a certain condition, and we need to preserve it by performing maintenance. The technical meaning of maintenance involves functionally checking, servicing, repairing, or even replacing of necessary devices, equipment, machinery, even building infrastructure. And we see this clear in that building that just recently burned down just just a couple of weeks ago. And that really showed us the importance not only of ensuring your health and safety in a company and making sure that you are complying to minimum legislation, but as often as we perform our checks is almost as often as we need to schedule maintenance. And it is because of poor maintenance that many things just fall by the wayside, especially the seemingly more insignificant things. That is why it is good to have a routine and a very good plan of how we should go about performing our maintenance. Now, again, we said each one of you listening today will actually have a part to play. Why is that? We'll take a look at what the law says. We start with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and we're going to focus on the employer just for a few seconds. Now, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 8, subsection 2.a, it says that an employer must provide and maintain a system of work. Now, that is with plant, machinery, and as far as reasonably practical, that they must be safe and without risk to health. But notice again exactly what the law is stating. Not only must we provide a safe working environment for our employees, along with the tools, equipment that must also be in a safe working condition, but it has to be maintained. Now, this is where maintenance plays such a big role in improving not only the quality of work that we do, but as you can see, it increases the safety because it helps to be without risk to the health of employees. In fact, it's without risk to the health of even our clients or those customers that walk through our door. But you as the employee, what must you do with the system of work that has been provided for you? And how can you maintain it? Well, aside from looking at section 14.1, where you are responsible for your own health and safety, and thus you need to look after the items, tools, equipment, and PPE that has been given to you to perform your task safely. If we find any situation, whether it be a task, a tool, a piece of equipment, or even our working condition that is unsafe or unhealthy, if this comes to your attention, it mentions that as soon as practicable, report such a situation to your employer, your health and safety representative for your workplace, and they will also report it to the employer. Now, why is this so important? Well, oftentimes we are working on faulty machinery, faulty tools, or we make do with the equipment that we have. Then an incident happens. Remember, the employer is saying that you must inspect this equipment. If you have not inspected it and you use equipment that is incorrect, you are liable. Remember, the law states that if you find an unhealthy or an unsafe situation, you must report it. Now, we would like to suggest that you use the tools that have been given to you in your safety file. Almost every single tool, piece of equipment, ladder, or anything that you can think of has a register or a checklist attached to it. And before use, it will take you just a few seconds to go through that little tool check, whether it be on a power tool, a hand tool, or some piece of equipment that you're working with, just to ensure that it is safe as well as beneficial to your well-being. If it is not, you must report it as soon as possible. Well, what does that mean? What does as soon as practicable mean? Well, we have a saying, as long as it's before the end of the shift. Many times, a lot is going on throughout the day. So if you find something in the morning, we often say, well, you have until the end of the shift to report it to us. But that is really also dangerous thinking. And that is because if it is something very serious, well, wouldn't you want to bring it to the attention almost immediately? Because by using that piece of equipment, you could essentially take your own life because of the dangerous situation that it's in. And we're talking about power cables that have exposed live wires, no guards on tools, or just damaged tools and equipment. Now let's take a look at the last piece of law that we're going to be looking at when it comes to maintenance. The Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 15, states that we must not interfere with, damage, or misuse things. So no person shall intentionally or recklessly interfere with, damage, or misuse anything which is provided in the interest of health and safety. So why does this affect maintenance? Well, basically what it is saying is that if something is unsafe, if a tool is damaged, if a piece of equipment is damaged, and we are using it, well then essentially what we are doing is intentionally misusing something which is provided in the interest of safety. And this is against the law. So again, each one of us have a part to play. But as always, I do not want to make these toolbox talks negative. So let's look at the final negative section of poor maintenance. And then we're going to go on to some positives with some good suggestions on how we can make sure that our maintenance routines keep us healthy and safe in our workplace. Some of the dangers of poor maintenance, and you will definitely agree with me, is when it's not maintained, you have a lot of breakdowns. And with a lot of breakdowns comes additional downtime. And this just lends to a waste of money. Because maintenance, although seemingly expensive, is not as costly as when we have too many breakdowns, as well as additional downtime of staff members. And this obviously leads to a loss of production. And this is in every single industry, whether you're a builder, a plumber, an electrician, even if you are on a maintenance for a currently new building. Maintenance is extremely important. Remember, the definition of maintenance is to preserve the condition. Well, that means we need to constantly check that condition. That falls again within Section 8 of the law, where the employer is providing a system of works. And we can often put that into a digital or a paper-based safety file. And this entire system of work can actually be fitted into that file where we have our full maintenance programs and schedules, our registers, our checklists. In fact, even toolbox talks, such as we have today, can all be fitted or suited into that system of works that is supposed to be provided as well as maintained. But if there are dangers, there must also be benefits of good preventative maintenance. Now, we all know that normal wear and tear can result in low machine efficiency. And that's fine because every piece of equipment, tool, or product comes with a certain amount of wear and tear. Preventative maintenance, however, assures optimal working conditions. It will also cover the lifespan of the equipment if it is done according to the manufacturer's recommendations and his own maintenance schedule. But notice the third point. A planned preventative maintenance may cause small hindrance for production, but that is nothing compared to actual downtime caused by a breakdown. So let's ask if any of you have ever experienced the breakdown of your vehicle. Perhaps you're driving and something goes wrong with your vehicle and you have a breakdown. How much time is wasted compared to if that vehicle had to go in for a day to be serviced? Well, I've never experienced that myself, but if you have, then you would notice that the time that your vehicle is off, the amount of production that is lost, and just the pure inconvenience of that breakdown really outweighs just making sure you have a planned preventative maintenance schedule in place. Now let us apply this to every aspect of our working situation. There's the right way to do it, there's the wrong way to do it, and there's also a lot that it depends on, such as routine maintenance, monthly maintenance, or even planned manufacturer routine maintenance. But the purpose really of ensuring we have maintenance or maintaining our equipment is to make sure that it is kept in not only satisfactory operating condition, but it's so that we can ensure systematic inspection, detection of unsafe or unhealthy items, and then the correction of any failures that may happen before they occur or before they develop into major defects. So if you take a look at the bottom of the page, there are different types of maintenance that we normally have. You've got your reactive, and this is only when it's down do we actually maintain or fix it. Then you have periodic. It's a scheduled maintenance. In other words, we buy a piece of equipment such as a fire extinguisher, and by law it has to be serviced by a serviceman every single year. So that's your periodic, and the same with a vehicle, every 10 to 15,000 depending on the vehicle you have. Then we have proactive. Proactive allows us to maintain the situation or the condition, and early detection will help us to fix it before any major damage occurs. And then we have predictive. Now this is analytics to predict machine failures, and this can be done through a software system. Oftentimes it can also be done through KPIs, these key performance indicators of how the machine's been used, how long it's been running, what is it been running for, how hard is it being worked on. And there's a little bit of a calculation to say this is when it should go in. And many times your manufacturer will give you this type of predictive maintenance schedule. So it can be done in different ways, but really all four is a maintenance program. But where do you fall? Are we only in the reactive side of maintenance? Are we only waiting until something breaks before we fix it? Or do we do the periodic maintenance only? Or are we really proactive and predict when something may or could happen so that we stop it before it becomes a major defect? So prevention is better than cure. And nobody can disagree with that, because we often use that in our day-to-day lives as well. But when it comes to ensuring the health and safety of ourselves, our staff, and our clients, the primary goal here is to ensure preventative maintenance program so that we prevent equipment failure. When we prevent equipment failure, what we are essentially doing is we are increasing the lifetime of our assets. Remember, the tools and the pieces of equipment that you are using as employees are what keeps the company going. Money in the bank helps. And all of you who own companies know that cash flow is one of the biggest things for a company. Without cash flow, you almost struggle to keep the business going. But what do we rely on? Do we rely on our clients to pay us? Because remember, our clients rely on us to perform the work. Do we rely on the money that we currently have? Well, that's going to be gone pretty soon. But what makes us money? Well, it's the tools, the equipment, and the system of works that we have designed in order to provide a service. Essentially, you are relying on that screwdriver, that hammer, or any sort of tool or equipment that you are currently using. Now, if we put that type of value to the actual tools and equipment that we have, we will see the need to ensure a good maintenance plan, a good systematic approach to proactive maintenance. Now, when we look at things like power tools, this can be simply done. And for those of you who are employees, we can have a register that just goes through inspecting the tool before use, ensuring that the tool that we are using is right for the purpose so that we do not damage that tool. You know, oftentimes we see guys using things that are not hammers to be a hammer. Oftentimes we are seeing the incorrect type of drill bit being used for the application. And we might think that this is a small thing. But remember, over a duration of time, it will eventually cause more and more damage. So only use the tool for the intended purpose. When we are done with that tool, clean it. There's nothing wrong with wiping the oil away or making sure it's clean before it is packed away. And it takes just a few seconds to wipe it down. Pack it away in its correct place. Then do regular inspections on our tools. If you find something wrong, report it immediately. Don't leave your tools laying around because they can get damaged while laying on site. Don't carry tools, especially power tools, by the electric cord. And never use a faulty tool. Report it and make sure it's removed from service until it is fixed. Even our vehicles, and many of us are given company vehicles. Remember, that vehicle allows you to get from your work to your workplace or to that company or client that you are going to be servicing. Having a well-maintained or a well-oiled vehicle will help you to actually perform your work. So make sure you have regular preventative maintenance or simple basic checks on your vehicle. We're not saying that you have to become a mechanic, but if you are not a mechanic, you can do small things to make sure your car is not going to break down, such as checking the tires, the oil, the water, the windscreen lubrication. All of this can be done very simply and just a few minutes every day. But then you must perform the manufacturer's routine maintenance, as well as your own visual inspections, checks, or reports on anything you find. Then, if you don't use vehicles correctly, you will have breakdowns. So make sure we use them for what they were intended to do, to take us from point A to point B. Don't overload them. Don't overdrive them. Don't speed. Don't use excessive braking. All we are doing is breaking down that asset that really brings us a company. Now let's take a look at PPE, something very important that all of us should use. Now, we know that in the line of the hierarchy of control, when we are managing our risk, PPE is actually the last form of control. There's so much more in place before we have to apply PPE. But we still see people not using or looking after their PPE correctly. We realize that it is the last resort, but it is mandatory. So please make sure that you not only have the right PPE, but that you as employees who are receiving this PPE, because it becomes your personal protective equipment, it is your responsibility to look after that equipment. So make sure you not only are using it, but use it for the right purpose. Keep it clean. Place it in a safe, clean area when you are not using it. Make sure you inspect it every day before you put it on. Remember, whose life is it saving? It's yours. It is your personal protective equipment. And then again, if you find anything that is unsafe or unhealthy, report those deficiencies as soon as possible. Again, prevention is better than cure. We do not want to wait until we are actually hurt or injured before we report an unsafe situation. So perhaps a question for each one of you in the audience. How do you view maintenance? Well, there are different types. The two types that we are looking at is your reactive or your preventative. Now, the reactive goes by the motto, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. This strategy is a short-term solution, but it will cost you more in the long run. Preventative maintenance, on the other hand, will be a carefully designed program where maintenance tasks are performed routinely in order to avoid larger, more costly fixes down the line. So again, we ask you, how do you view your maintenance? Not just the employers, each one of you employees as well. Because when we do maintenance, often we solely rely on just reactive, waiting for it to be damaged. But when we have an adequate preventative maintenance program, we can avoid these long-term problems. So make sure that you save money, because we focus our efforts on a few minutes every day maintaining our equipment. And if we don't use those few minutes every day, they eventually accumulate into days or even weeks of downtime or damage. So what do you think? Is it cheaper and faster to have preventative maintenance? Or are you happy with your reactive maintenance at the moment? Again, the question is really posed to you. How do you view your maintenance, and how do you do your maintenance? Well, depending on your answer, you might be at risk. Because when equipment is not working in optimal condition, it creates many hazards. In fact, it creates an unsafe working condition. Due to these unsafe working conditions, as well as the either small, medium, or large hazards that they cause, it could result in more injuries and accidents on the job. So preventative maintenance goes a long way in preventing or resulting in fewer job injuries and accidents, which is essentially what our entire risk management plan wants to achieve. We can do this not only by our toolbox talks, making a risk assessment, but also by planned and diligent maintenance. So be proactive. If you don't have a current program, can you put something in place to bring down the long-term cost and increase the quality and efficiency of your day-to-day working? Well, it starts with making sure you have pre-planned maintenance tasks, a register and a checklist for every piece of tool or equipment that you have. Inspect it regularly throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the month. Make sure we have a planned, routined maintenance, especially if the manufacturer requires it, or even if the law requires of you to have this maintenance. Decreasing equipment downtime will be a benefit that saves not only time, but also money. And really, this is what all of us need to do in our companies. So again, we ask you, are you proactive or are you reactive towards your view in maintenance? Well, being proactive will help us in the long run. Perhaps being reactive is a short-sighted view to our occupational health and safety, especially when it comes to the maintenance of our valued items, such as our tools, equipment, and assets that we have. Now, this all works out to being reliable to our clients. Preventative maintenance can help a company become more reliable as a business partner. Now, why do we say that? Well, customers can count on a company when they deliver products, materials, or services on time and without unnecessary delays. Take a look at an example. A resort or a hotel or a bed and breakfast with a broken air conditioner will not succeed for very long, especially coming into our summer season. So by always offering a reliable product or service, a company will enhance its customer service as well as improve its reputation. We become a reliable contractor or service provider to our clientele. All because we have taken a proactive approach to not only our health and safety, but things that benefit our health and safety, like a good maintenance program. Well, thank you very much for listening to this Toolbox Talk this morning. We really do appreciate your time that you have taken out. As always, we have a little Do You Know section, and we wanted to just touch base again on a risk assessment. What is a risk assessment? It is such a vital tool to every single company. Now, the term risk assessment is very open to interpretation, and oftentimes it causes a lot of uncertainty. But its intention is to allow flexibility, so it doesn't have to be too complicated, but it must be suitable and sufficient. Now, what does this actually mean? Because it's not really defined in legislation for us. Well, let us take a look at these two terms. Suitable means suitable for the desired purpose. In other words, it's meant for or adapted for an occasion or use. It's appropriate for a condition or an occasion. Only you would understand what condition or occasion you are sitting in. Thus, we need to always be changing our risk assessments. It cannot just be one broad one that covers everything, because we are always in different conditions or occasions. Again, it means a proactive approach to risk assessment. Sufficient means of a quantity that can fulfill a need or requirement without being too abundant. So don't overcomplicate it, but it must be sufficient to that condition or occasion that you're experiencing. And then make sure all of your employees are trained in risk assessments. In fact, why not have a training needs analysis done in your company to check whether your employees need some sort of specific training, whether it be on the actual risk assessment you're providing, a better induction, an employee orientation, or perhaps first aid, firefighting, or some sort of short course or even long-term course that can result in the health and safety of your company being increased to an optimal level. Remember, all of this is taken from the Occupational Health and Safety Act as a minimum requirement to every company in South Africa. Again, thank you very much for joining us for this Toolbox Talk. Next week, we are going to be looking at PPE care, and I'm going to hand it over back to you, Sean.
Perfect, Chris. Before we do end off the session this morning, we do have a comment from the attendees. It reads, there is another section of law under the construction regulation, section 11.2, structures. Inspection at least every 6 months for 2 years and thereafter yearly to ensure the building are safe and to keep a record of this. This is simply ignored by property owners. Do you have anything to add there?
Not at all. Nothing to add. Just a very big thank you for bringing out that reminder. It definitely is in legislation. In fact, most building control officers will be encouraged to let their clients know about this form of legislation. That is why we are seeing so much maintenance being neglected on many new buildings. So thank you very much for whoever brought that to our attention.
All right, thanks so much for joining us this morning, guys. I am going to go ahead and end off the session. I do hope to see everyone same time next week, Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.